Dolly Parton's lifelong best friend Judy Ogle is once again at the center of attention after Dolly's death, because their nearly 7-decade friendship was one of the most private, misunderstood, and enduring relationships in the superstar's life. For generations, fans watched Dolly become one of the most famous women in the world, but behind the glamorous outfits, unforgettable songs, Hollywood appearances, and enormous success was someone who had known her long before any of it existed. That person was Judy Ogle, a girl Dolly met while growing up in Tennessee, long before the stages, awards, movie sets, and international fame. Now that Dolly is gone, people are looking back at that extraordinary friendship and asking what Judy meant to her, what they experienced together, and why their bond became the subject of so much speculation over the years. Their story did not begin in Nashville surrounded by celebrities. It began when they were children, when Dolly was still one of 12 siblings growing up in the Tennessee mountains, and neither girl could have known what the future would bring. Judy would eventually become Dolly's closest confidant, trusted assistant, traveling companion, and someone who could understand what Dolly needed without her having to explain it. Their friendship survived distance, careers, relationships, disagreements, public rumors, and some of the most difficult moments of Dolly's life. Yet the reason Judy's role is being examined so closely now is not simply because she was Dolly's oldest friend. It is because Judy was one of the few people who knew Dolly before the world knew her, and that gave their connection a depth that fame could never reproduce. Dolly once described their childhood adventures in a way that compared them to Thelma and Louise, capturing the sense that these two young women were always ready for another story. They were also very different from one another. Dolly was naturally outgoing, energetic, humorous, and comfortable around crowds, while Judy was quieter and more reserved. Somehow those differences became part of what made them work so well together. Dolly could walk into a room and command attention, while Judy was comfortable staying away from the spotlight. That balance became increasingly important as Dolly's career began moving at an extraordinary speed. Dolly was writing songs, appearing on television, performing, traveling, and building a name for herself in Nashville, while Judy was creating a very different life. Judy eventually joined the military, partly because she needed the income and insurance to help support her family. For a time, the two friends were separated, but the distance never erased their connection. When Judy completed her military service, she moved to Nashville, and the friendship quickly returned to the center of Dolly's life. By then, Dolly was already becoming a major figure, but Judy remained one of the people who could still treat her like the girl she had always known. That was something Dolly valued enormously. Fame can create a strange barrier around a person. The more successful someone becomes, the harder it can be to know who genuinely understands them and who is simply reacting to the celebrity image. Judy had no reason to be impressed by Dolly's fame because she had known Dolly before there was anything to be impressed by. She had seen the person underneath the public image. That may be why Judy eventually became much more than a childhood friend. Dolly described her as an assistant, valet, hairdresser, makeup artist, and trusted companion, but those titles barely captured the relationship. Judy could help with practical things, but she was also someone Dolly could turn to when she needed emotional support, creative company, or simply the comfort of having someone familiar nearby. There were even moments when Dolly was working through song ideas and Judy was close enough to help her think through lyrics. Dolly's songwriting was deeply personal, and she generally preferred privacy while creating. Yet Judy was different. Dolly could have Judy around without feeling as though her creative space had been invaded. That level of trust is difficult to build and even harder to maintain for decades. Their friendship also produced some unforgettable stories, including a wild trip to New York City during the 1960s. Dolly was already appearing on the Porter Wagoner show, but the program did not air on the East Coast, which meant she could walk around New York with far less fear of being recognized. For two young women from Tennessee, that freedom was exciting. They dressed up, explored the city, and embraced the opportunity to enjoy themselves away from Dolly's growing public profile. Judy had changed during her time in the military and had developed a more dramatic personal style, while Dolly was already developing the distinctive appearance that would become one of her trademarks. The two women dressed boldly and carried firearms in their purses for protection, according to Dolly's account of the trip. One evening, they ventured into an adult movie theater and quickly realized they were not interested in staying. When they came back outside, a stranger misunderstood Dolly's identity and began bothering her. The situation became uncomfortable, but Judy reportedly found the whole episode funny. Dolly did not share her amusement. The incident eventually ended, but what mattered was how the two friends reacted to it afterward. Even when something embarrassing or stressful happened, Judy could still make Dolly laugh. Their relationship was filled with those kinds of contrasts. Dolly could be intense, ambitious, and focused, while Judy could bring a calmer presence and a sense of humor that helped balance her friend. Later, when Dolly had an apartment in New York, Judy stayed with her there, another sign of how intertwined their lives had become. Their friendship continued through Dolly's growing success, and then came another remarkable chapter during the 1980s when Dolly was working on her television career. One morning, Dolly and Judy were suddenly awakened by an earthquake. Their immediate concern was getting out safely, but Dolly apparently found time to look in a mirror before leaving. Even in the middle of the chaos, she was still Dolly Parton. Judy was focused on getting out, while Dolly wanted to make sure she did not step outside looking anything less than her best. The story may sound funny, but it also captures something important about their relationship. Judy had witnessed Dolly's personality in moments that the public rarely saw. She knew the jokes, the habits, the insecurities, the stubbornness, and the determination that existed behind the polished public image. As Dolly's career expanded into movies, television, and business, Judy continued to be one of the people closest to her. When Dolly moved to Los Angeles to pursue her growing film career, she sometimes called Judy back in Tennessee and asked her to come out. Judy would make the long journey, stay with Dolly, help her work through songs and ideas, and make sure Dolly took care of basic things like eating and resting. Eventually, Judy moved to Los Angeles as well and rented an apartment next door with her partner. For a while, the arrangement seemed almost perfect, with the two women close enough to remain part of each other's daily lives. But that closeness eventually created tension in Judy's personal relationship. Her partner became increasingly uncomfortable with how much time Judy spent with Dolly and how central Dolly's career had become to Judy's life. From that perspective, the friendship could feel like competition for attention, and eventually Judy faced an extremely difficult choice. She wanted to protect her relationship, which meant creating more distance from Dolly. For Dolly, that separation was devastating. She had spent years depending on Judy's presence, and suddenly the person who had been beside her through so many stages of life was stepping back. Dolly later reflected on that period as one of the darkest stretches she had experienced. She felt isolated while other people around her were moving forward with their own relationships and lives. The emotional pressure affected her deeply, and she later connected that period with changes in her eating, weight, and physical well-being. But the story did not end with that separation. Dolly and Judy eventually found their way back to one another, and when they did, the friendship returned with a strength that showed just how difficult it was for either woman to remain apart for long. Judy once again became the person who knew what Dolly needed. If Dolly was hungry, Judy might already have food waiting. If Dolly did not want to deal with phone calls, Judy could handle them. If Dolly needed quiet, Judy understood. If Dolly was struggling, Judy listened. It was the kind of support that goes beyond a job description. Even Carl Dean, Dolly's husband, understood how valuable Judy was to his wife. He knew that when Dolly was with Judy, she was being cared for by someone who genuinely knew her. Over time, Judy became so integrated into Dolly's life that family members viewed her as part of the family. The friendship also had a spiritual side. Dolly and Judy sometimes took trips to the mountains or the ocean simply to get away from the noise of everyday life. They would pray, meditate, and spend time reconnecting without the pressures of fame and business surrounding them. When Judy faced difficult moments, Dolly tried to support her in the same way Judy had supported her. Their loyalty moved in both directions. This history becomes especially important when looking at the rumors that followed them for decades. Because Dolly and Judy were so close, some people began speculating about the true nature of their relationship. The rumors became persistent enough that Dolly eventually addressed them publicly. She had already experienced situations where people became confused about why she and Judy might share a hotel room or even one bed while traveling. But Dolly consistently maintained that there was nothing romantic about their relationship. They were lifelong friends, and their closeness came from decades of shared experiences rather than a secret romance. In her autobiography, Dolly devoted significant attention to Judy and the rumors surrounding their friendship, making clear that she considered Judy family. She also acknowledged that their friendship was not perfect. They argued, they had disagreements, they went through periods when they needed space. There were times when their lives pulled them in different directions. But the relationship survived because the foundation underneath it was stronger than any individual disagreement. Dolly later explained that people sometimes struggled to understand how two women could be so close without the relationship being romantic. She compared the speculation to similar rumors that had surrounded other famous women. For Dolly, the answer was simple. Some friendships are extraordinarily deep, and that does not automatically change their nature. She never appeared ashamed of the closeness she shared with Judy. If anything, she seemed proud that they had remained loyal to each other for so many years. She also made it clear that if she ever had a different reality to share, she would have no reason to hide it. Her confidence in that answer reflected something fundamental about Dolly's personality. She could laugh at gossip without allowing it to define her. But the most revealing part of their relationship may have been what happened when Dolly's fame reached its highest levels. Judy never became a celebrity herself. She did not appear to be chasing attention or using Dolly's success to build her own public profile. Instead, she remained largely behind the scenes, where she could be the person who knew Dolly simply as Dolly. That distinction matters. The world knew the superstar who could walk onto a stage and captivate thousands of people. Judy knew the friend who might need someone to bring her food, help her think through a song, listen to her worries, or simply sit nearby while she worked. She had seen Dolly before the wigs, before the fame, before the movie roles, and before the millions of fans. She had also seen Dolly during some of the most emotionally difficult periods of her life. That is why her silence after Dolly's death carries so much emotional weight for fans who understand the history. Judy's perspective comes from nearly 7 decades of memories that most people will never know. She knew the private person behind the public legend. She knew the girl from Tennessee and the woman who became an international icon. She saw the transformation happen gradually, one song, one opportunity, one decision at a time. And while the public remembers Dolly through songs like Jolene, I Will Always Love You, and Coat of Many Colors, Judy remembered the person who existed before those songs became famous. Dolly herself often spoke about the importance of remaining connected to her roots, and Judy was one of the strongest links to those early years. She represented a part of Dolly's life that fame could never recreate. After Carl Dean's death in March 2025, Dolly faced another deeply emotional chapter. She had spent so much time caring for her husband and dealing with the circumstances surrounding his passing that she acknowledged she had not always given enough attention to her own health. In the months that followed, she dealt with medical problems, postponed performances, and eventually canceled her planned Las Vegas residency so she could focus on recovery. Even then, Dolly continued working on projects, including her Broadway musical, and she remained determined to keep creating. Her health struggles became increasingly important in the final chapter of her life, and despite her efforts to reassure fans, the situation ultimately became more serious. Dolly passed away at the age of 80 in Nashville after a brief battle with cancer, according to the reference provided for this story. Her death immediately triggered an enormous wave of public grief. Tributes came from musicians, actors, entertainers, and fans around the world. American flags were lowered in her honor, flowers appeared, and people began sharing memories of what Dolly Parton had meant to them. Yet among all the public tributes, there was another question that continued to draw attention. What was this loss like for Judy Ogle, the friend who had known Dolly for almost her entire life? Because Judy had never sought the spotlight, her relationship with Dolly was always difficult for the public to fully understand. Fans saw photographs, heard stories, and read Dolly's own descriptions, but Judy remained largely away from the cameras. That made her role even more fascinating. She was not trying to become famous because of Dolly. She was simply there. For decades, when the world was watching Dolly Parton become a superstar, Judy was watching the person she had known since childhood continue to grow. She saw the successes, the disappointments, the pressure, the laughter, the difficult decisions, and the moments when Dolly needed someone she could trust completely. Their friendship survived a period when it nearly fell apart. It survived public gossip. It survived physical distance. It survived changing relationships. And it survived the enormous transformation that happens when an ordinary childhood friend becomes one of the most famous people on earth. That may be the greatest answer to all the questions that surrounded them. Their bond did not need a label beyond friendship because the history itself explained everything. Judy was there before Dolly had an audience. She remained there after Dolly became a global icon. And now, after Dolly's death, that history has become part of the legacy people are trying to understand. Dolly Parton left behind music that will continue to be played for generations, businesses that will continue operating, charitable work that will continue helping people, and a public image that became one of the most recognizable in modern entertainment. But behind all of that was something far more personal, a lifelong friendship that began with two girls in Tennessee and somehow survived almost 70 years of change. Judy Ogle was there when Dolly was just dreaming about becoming a star, and she remained one of the people closest to her when the dream became reality. The rumors may have followed them, but they never defined the friendship. The arguments may have tested them, but they never erased the bond. Fame may have changed almost everything around Dolly, but it could not replace the people who knew her before the world did. And perhaps that is why Judy's story matters so much now. When the lights go out and the public image begins to fade, the people who knew someone before the fame are the ones who can remember the details that history books cannot capture. Judy knew Dolly when she was simply Dolly, a young girl from Tennessee with a big dream, a powerful voice, and no idea how far that dream would take her. Decades later, that girl had become an international legend, but to Judy, she was still the same friend. And now that Dolly Parton is gone, the world may remember the superstar, the songwriter, the actress, the entrepreneur, and the philanthropist, but Judy Ogle carries memories of the person behind all of those titles. That may be the most powerful part of their story. Dolly Parton spent a lifetime giving the world songs about love, heartbreak, family, dreams, and resilience. Judy was one of the few people who shared the real-life chapters behind the legend. Their friendship did not need the spotlight to become extraordinary. It became extraordinary simply because it lasted, through childhood, fame, distance, conflict, loss, and change. And when the world says goodbye to Dolly Parton, one of the most meaningful tributes may come not from another celebrity or another award, but from the woman who had been beside her since long before anyone else knew her name.